everyone, this is Gale from PaulGaleNetwork.com, and thank you for joining me today for video game news and video game talk. Yes, this 2-in-1 video brought to you on February 8th, 2022 is because in news today, Nintendo just announced on Twitter a few moments ago that tomorrow, February 9th, Wednesday, at 2 p.m. Pacific Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, there will be an approximately 40-minute long Nintendo Direct presentation, primarily for games releasing in the first half of the calendar year 2022. Primarily releasing in the first half, which means there's a good reason to expect that there will be some surprises that are titles a little bit farther off, like in the fall of 2022 perhaps, maybe even a little glimpse, a trailer if you will, at a title coming in 2023. But yeah, that's basically the news. That, and I will be streaming this tomorrow live. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And we could end the video there. But like I said, we're going to hop directly into video game talk, and that's going to include some speculation. What I think might show, what are the possible candidates, what's maybe not likely to show, what would be really surprising to me personally, and just why should you be hyped? Okay. So first of all, I've said before, Nintendo right now is all systems go. They are firing off on all cylinders, just delivering news after news, hit after hit. Nintendo released just absolute bangers in terms of games and announcements pretty much from October on, with Metroid Dread, and Metroid Dread opening to the biggest sales ever for a Metroid game in its opening month in the United States, and also doing extremely well in Japan, Europe, other territories. We got the release of Mario Party Superstars. We got the hit release of Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Pokemon Shining Pearl, debuting to sales much higher than a lot of people anticipated. We got January, starting off with a bang, Pokemon Legends Arceus, second biggest opening of any Nintendo Switch game in its almost 5-year history, with over 6.5 million sold in that first weekend or almost first week. Tremendous news. We've got the upcoming Kirby and the Forgotten Land coming out next month in March. We already have announcements, even if you go back to E3 and throughout 2021, that Splatoon 3 is coming out this year, that Triangle Strategy is coming out, that the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is still on track for 2022, even in their latest fiscal report, which that's another cool thing, by the way. Bayonetta 3 on track for 2022. So you're really looking at like, wow, there's a lot of positive momentum. What else? That fiscal report that we just got a few days ago. Nintendo officially passed 103.5 million, becoming the third best-selling video game console of all time, reaching 100 million far quicker than Wii, passing Wii's lifetime already by 2 million practically, and seeing its software sales just in record-breaking territory. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Animal Crossing, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Pokemon Sword, and Pokemon Shield. All of these titles, to get into the top 10 list on Nintendo Switch, soon is going to be only 15 million sellers and up. And probably by the end of the Nintendo Switch generation, which is going to be a few more years, it's going to be like a top 20 list. I mean, a top 10 list of games, but in order to break into it, you have to be a top 20, a 20 million seller, Things are just going really well for them. They got the Nintendo Switch OLED out. And even though this isn't directly thanks to them, it is helping them in a way. And the chip shortage, thanks to more modern platforms like the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X using more similar components, those chips are more in demand. And not just for them, but for in other products out there that use those same chips, those same nanometer chipsets in your smart cars, for instance. So the demand for those chips is higher because they're newer. So it can only go so far. So you're seeing fewer PlayStation 5s and Xbox Series X and S consoles that can get released on the market. Not that Nintendo is not impacted as well in how many Nintendo Switch systems they can manufacture, but they're not impacted as severely. So this means that, and like I said, this is a way that Nintendo is benefiting in a way, because there aren't as many PlayStation 5s and Xbox Series X consoles available, potential people that don't have a Nintendo Switch yet that do want a new system are now going to buy a Nintendo Switch. But unlike it being well, I guess I got to get something better than nothing and not being happy with it, they're going to jump into an ecosystem that is actually thriving, that not only has a huge amount of software available in its library of the last 5 years practically, but a really healthy 2022 and seemingly beyond. So even if it's their second choice at this point, or third choice at this point even, they're going to hop into something good. And that's going to continue to drive software, propel momentum, word of mouth spread, etc. So I see Nintendo definitely dominating 2022 in terms of sales. You could say part of that is because, yeah, it's the amount of product available on the competition's side, but it's not like Nintendo could just pump out 30 million if they wanted to. No, they're going to be in that 23 million zone if they're lucky and don't have any kind of setbacks. On the software side, there is no denying that Nintendo has been king of software lately, with just hit after hit being released these entire last 5 years of Nintendo Switch's life, with a very steady flow of new games, ports from the Wii U era that a lot of people missed out on, a healthy flow of third-party entries, indie support, Nintendo Switch Online services, etc. So the outlook is really good. The momentum is strong. Now is the time, while Nintendo's trending, while you still see Wii U trending once in a while and Pokemon trending. Pokemon is really hot. It's hotter than ever, with Sword and Shield sales being the second highest selling Pokemon game ever, next to Red, Blue, and Green only. That, keep this momentum strong. Give us a strong, healthy look at what's to come in 2022, and maybe a little glimpse of what is after. What do I think is going to be there tomorrow, though? I spent 7 minutes talking on just why I think you should be excited because of everything else that's going on in the world of Nintendo to be excited. What do I think is going to be there? Okay. We've got about 10 months to go, a little over 10, until the December 22nd, 2022 release of the Super Mario CG movie that's being put together by Nintendo and Illumination Studios. We haven't seen any footage of it yet. We haven't heard any characters from this robust cast speaking any lines, not even a still image. Nintendo has been pretty tight-lipped on it. Could 10 months be enough time to set the hype, not show off too much, but show off just enough to megaton drop on the internet? Maybe. I think there is a greater than 50% chance that the Mario movie will get some type of tease tomorrow. I'm not completely confident that it is. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, 90%. I'm pretty sure, because there are some studios that release the first trailer or image far before a year. You're looking at movies that sometimes have their first trailer or image a year and a half ahead. And then sometimes it's really just like several months. So I could see that Nintendo would be on that more conservative side and hold off until just a few months to go. However, the momentum is so strong and powerful right now that an image, a title of the final movie name with just a look at what do the polygon models of Mario and Luigi and Princess Peach and Bowser and a couple of other characters look like, a poster drop if you will, that could be enough. And that, I guarantee, will be an image that gets shared all across the internet. So that's why I'm saying a greater than 50% chance that something will happen. If it is, it doesn't even have to be a trailer if they're not ready yet. It could just be a poster with a look of what do these awesome characters look like, but now, in film quality, when you don't have to worry about gameplay and multiple camera angles and all of that kind of stuff, right? Where you could control it better. That's kind of my hope also. I think that with Kirby and the Forgotten Land coming out next month, that's going to be Nintendo's big one. I wouldn't be surprised if we get like 4 to 6 minutes on it. Usually I like my Nintendo Directs to be kind of snappy, where, we have a lot of big, 1 minute, 2 minute long trailer drops throughout, a little bit of a sizzle reel. I don't think that any one particular game tomorrow needs to have, 10 minutes of talk, 12 minutes of talk. Even though 40 minutes is a good amount of time for the presentation, I think that would be too long of time spent on one video, like 10 or 12 minutes just to Kirby. So I don't know if that's going to be the case, but hopefully not, in my opinion. But we'll see. But Kirby is a definite go. It gives Pokemon Legends Arceus a little bit of breathing time to be the big seller and then let people get ready for Kirby. Will Pokemon be mentioned tomorrow? Pokemon Day is coming at the end of the month, so I expect Pokemon Company to have something then. But I could also see thank you to all of the Nintendo Switch owners who have made Pokemon Legends Arceus a great success. We're happy to announce today that coming later in 2022 will be free DLC. More details later. Like, that kind of thing would be the extent of what I think they would do Pokemon-wise. And, like, this game doesn't need any jolt yet, which is why I think they could just wait on that kind of news until February. But if they want to drop that little kind of piece now, that's just going to further add to this enormous hype and this just super front-loaded sales in the game, because the word of mouth, I said, is going to be so important for Pokemon Legends Arceus. There's going to be a lot of hype going into it from that perspective of what's Nintendo going to do? What's Game Freak going to do with this new direction of a Pokemon game? But how well it will continue to sell, if it has legs, if it is an evergreen title, is going to be really determined by how good of a quality product it is. Because typical Pokemon games, people kind of know what to expect, and people kind of like what they like, and they're going to sell. And if it's a newer generation, it's going to sell this well, and if it's a remake generation, it could sell this well. If it's a remake gen and it's good quality, it'll be here, and that's kind of it. But a brand new Pokemon game with a new direction, well, there's a lot of interest in it. It's going to sell initially well, but if it's not good, unlike the other Pokemon generation titles that don't necessarily have to be amazing hits every time, they're still going to sell within what Pokemon Company, what Nintendo anticipates. Whereas a newer one, there's a little bit of a risk. It has to be a better quality because it's unknown and the word of mouth has to spread. Fortunately, the word of mouth is spreading like wildfire because the game is great. I was originally like, this is an 8.3 to 8.6 quality title in my opinion. I'm not done with it yet, but as I've been playing more and more, I'm like, okay, probably the quality of the title is somewhere in that 8.3, 8.4 maybe territory, where the graphics are good but not great. Sometimes you get a little bit of a frame dip in characters in the foreground, but overall, draw distance, animation, they're good quality polygon models. The game could use some more depth in textures, perhaps, maybe a little bit of voice acting or some dynamic camera angles for some cinematics, that kind of thing. But so much of the game is so good that it's just a great game in general. But the fun factor is what's driving my score to saying, well, hold on, the fun factor side is so high that I'm having like 9.5 levels of fun at times. Now, I cannot fully give it a final score yet because I haven't finished playing it yet, but there are more surprises and there are more elements of joy that I've experienced, especially as I'm going later into the game, that I didn't quite get earlier. Some of those are new gameplay experiences too that are adding to the thing. A little bit of spoiler, but you do get more Pokemon that you could ride than you saw in the trailers. A tiny spoiler, but some of those gameplay elements that are structured around them are adding to the experience. So the fun factor is going up. It's not like the technical prowess is, later in the game the resolution's up, or later in the game, this place has a crazy amount of textures. This later part of the game has Pokemon in the far draw distance having perfectly, moving animations. Like, no, that part doesn't change. So my probably increase in score is being attributed to the fact that, and this is why it's important before you review a game, you play it almost all the way through, or all the way through legitimately, to be really fair and accurate with it, because something like this might happen. Your interest level and your fun level could increase because something different happened in the last part of the game. What if a boss battle, the final boss battle of a game, like hypothetically, this is not in this case, but what if you were like at a 7, like this is a good game, this is a good game, you're playing a game, and then you reach the last area of a boss, and it's like a 40-minute build up to that last boss. The boss battle is absolutely brilliant, everything about it is like perfect, and you were like, wow, the game was a 7, and you only played like half of it, and you're like 7. But by playing that last half, and in particular that last chunk, that 40-minute experience, that 50-minute experience was so thrilling. Would that not impact your score? Right? Maybe the graphics, the engine didn't change at that point, but the quality of fun and the entertainment behind that level could have impacted your score. Now you're like, well, I left on such a high. Okay, it doesn't make it a 10 all of a sudden, but the overall experience, instead of a 7, you take that portion of that thrill and like, gosh, the game was an 8 for me. It was great, you know? It's important to be thorough with your review, to give your audience, your readers, your viewers, even honest with yourself, you know, like a realistic impression of it. Pokemon Legends Arceus has only gotten better with me. It hasn't gone down. There hasn't been anything like, I'm kind of over it. I'm going into each new area. It's more and more fun. Anyways, like that was a long Pokemon Legends Arceus tangent. So it's all about rewinding back to my original thought. It doesn't necessarily need an injection of fuel right now, but at that almost 2-week mark, just to drop that little DLC is coming announcement, I could see. We're probably going to get updates on Triangle Strategy, as that's a title that's coming out soon, and that looks like it's going to be a really good quality game of a similar experience visually speaking as Octopath Traveler, but an entirely different game. It's not a sequel or anything like that. Uses that awesome 2D HD look, and I think Square Enix is gonna knock it out of the park with Triangle Strategy. I'm excited for that one. Hopefully in the United States we get some kind of collector's edition. Other countries, other territories are, but we'll see. That's going to be there. Advance Wars 1 and 2 reboot, I think that's going to be there. I don't think either one of those titles is going to have a particularly long segment, but if one's going to get a little bit longer, maybe it's Advance Wars 1 and 2 reboot, because when the game was supposed to come out, this past December and then got delayed to, like a spring kind of time of 2022, we knew things are going to get better for the game. It didn't need to come out in 2021. 2021 was actually a pretty packed year. 2022 looks like it's going to be even more of a packed year for Nintendo, but I think we're going to see a pretty significant difference in visual fidelity and stuff like that for that game tomorrow. What else could show up? We already know so much. They could show off nothing new, and already tomorrow's Nintendo Direct could just have what I talked about so far, and you throw in one other one, Splatoon 3. We know it's coming out this year. That looks like it could be a late June, summer vibe kind of game, getting ready for summer. Splatoon 3. Announce Splatfests. Announce the last 1 or 2 upcoming Splatfests for Splatoon 2, because there still are 1 or 2 left scheduled, if I'm not mistaken, before Splatoon 3. They didn't finish it off, so that would be a good way to get people hyped up and make sure that they're playing Splatoon 2 and get them craving for, oh my gosh, what is Splatoon 3 like? I think that is a pretty good likelihood. Maybe they throw in something like could we get a Nintendo Switch OLED model with a splash of ink colors on it in time for Splatoon 3? Maybe. Some Joy-Cons, a Pro Controller. I wouldn't mind a new colored Pro Controller. And I think, kind of like the way they did with Xenoblade and Splatoon in the past, Smash Brothers, I wouldn't mind a Splatoon 3 Pro Controller. I think it could be really colorful, really fun. That's just something in general that I kind of wish Nintendo was already doing in the last 5 years, is designated controllers, colors. First party, I want my blue, my red, my green, my yellow. I want my Nintendo 64 kind of fantastic color lineup, both clear and solid, on Nintendo Switch. Now, would I buy 8 of those clear and solids? No, but would I buy 4 of one or the other? Probably. Like, unnecessary, but just from an art perspective, I would. You know, the way I have my entertainment center set up, I have my video game systems, my NES, NES classics, my controllers from different generations, like on this 3-level entertainment center, and I like the way it looks, so I'd probably buy those uh, different colored Pro controllers. We get a lot of Joy-Cons, but not so much on the Pro controller side of things. But yeah, Splatoon 3, I think that's going to be here tomorrow. Bayonetta 3, that's another one. Uh, I think Bayonetta 3 is more of an October title, like August to October. I say October just because I relate to Halloween, and I'm thinking, well, you know, several years ago, I did a Bayonetta 2 pumpkin carving, and that was my Halloween pumpkin carving for that year that Bayonetta 2 came out on Wii U. So, kind of like Luigi's Mansion 3 Halloween title, I could see Bayonetta 3 being one too, Witchcraft, all that stuff. But maybe it's like an August, late summer thing. We don't know, of course, but maybe it shows up tomorrow. We didn't get like a big, in-depth gameplay trailer, so maybe a gameplay trailer gets shown. And I think that would be really hot. So I think that's a decent chance right there of it showing up tomorrow. And then, of course, we have to talk about, because this is the biggest, most anticipated game that we know of for 2022, and that is the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. After every quarter fiscal report of the pipeline for what's to come, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild's sequel is always stated as 2022 release. We hear different rumors here and there from different outlets that the game looks like 2023. And then we hear like, no, it looks like we're really pushing it for 2022. Personally, I'm buying that it's 2022. I'm expecting something like a November 20th, November 21st release, something maybe before Black Friday, but right around there. And that would be a tremendous win. If it's coming out this year, showing a new trailer and getting the ultra hype ready for something 9 months in advance is definitely possible. If they don't show it here, then it's a smaller window between presumably June, E3, and November. Could they not do anything in a 5-month span? I mean, could they not do anything now, and then 4 months from now, just do the marketing from a 5-month perspective? That's entirely possible. There are some games that fizzle out if you're not dropping new things, and the public interest kind of starts to dip unless if they're seeing new things, or it's not a big enough of a game to tell people it's coming out a year in advance and drop the date and drop the trailer and then not show anything until like the last month or two of promo. Breath of the Wild, like the sequel, it's big enough that you give us a trailer now, everyone's going to be good for 4 months. People are going to be dissecting that thing on YouTube, on the internet, all over the place. It's going to be trending. That video is going to be one of those 15 million view trailers within the first month and stuff like that. I think you show off the sequel, give the name, and maybe not a date, but you confirm 2022. Maybe you give the date. But let's not get greedy. Let's not say all of those things. Let's just get a trailer and a name and confirmation that's 2022. That's already kind of a lot. But I think Breath of the Wild stands a pretty good chance of being here. Like, I'm setting this thing up to be awesome. Not to overhype, but what we know of what's coming is already so thrilling. It's already such a magnificent lineup for 2022, and we haven't even gotten into too much of the third-party territory yet, or indie territory yet, that we haven't even talked about surprises. That's how pumped I am. Could Hollow Knight Silksong show up? That's one that it's kind of funny because everybody always says maybe this time. The last time we had a presentation, Indie World, I was like, I don't think Hollow Knight's going to be here, just because at this point it's safer to say that it's not than it is. Like, I recently made a post on Twitter that got a pretty good amount of attention, and that was the likelihood of a Nintendo Direct happening in February. And I looked at the last 10 possible years worth of Februaries that a Nintendo Direct took place, or that a Nintendo Direct could have taken place. 7 of the last 10 possible Februaries did have a Nintendo Direct of some sort, whether it was a Direct, a Mini, an Animal Crossing, Direct itself, 7 out of 10. So I said it was a 70% chance at this point that one's going to happen in February. And if one does happen in February, which it is, that raises it to like 72 something percent for next year. If it didn't happen in February, that kind of drops it down to like 64% chance. At this point, this only adds fuel to the fire of probably, we're at 72% likelihood now going forward into the future that a Nintendo Direct will happen in the month of February. Unless if 2023 comes by, there is no presentation, okay, then that's going to start to drop it again, But at this point, we'll be at 8 out of 11. Will we go 9 out of 12, or will we go 8 out of 12? Thus dropping. We'll see. It's definitely exciting, though. And I'm just really happy that we're going to get one. But Hollow Knight, at this point, it's February. It's a big Nintendo Direct. We know that that's a big game. A lot of people want Silk Song. The original sold over 3 million across all platforms. It would be a major win if Nintendo is the one to announce this with some type of timed exclusivity. Whether that's 3 months or 6 months, or even if it's not timed exclusive, but announcing it here would be pretty big. Do I finally say, yeah, I think it's going to show up tomorrow? Well, it's the most likely it's ever been. But that's kind of obvious too because it's been the furthest along, right, to today's date. So I'll say, I think it'll finally show up. I think Silk Song will finally show up tomorrow. It's gonna be time. It might not though. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge though. That's one that I really do hope. This is the one that for me personally, I've wanted to see shown off more because it was originally scheduled for a 2021 release, got pushed to 2022. But I love TMNT. I was a huge Ninja Turtles kid, and I still am a huge Ninja Turtles kid for that matter. I thought that, playing Streets of Rage 4, within the last couple of years was a lot of fun, and I'm ready for more of that. Play with my wife, play with my son, play with my daughter, have the 4 of us playing Ninja Turtles together would be really cool. There's good room for that game to grow with DLC and different skins and different, expansions coming on later down the road. Yeah. I'm gonna say Ninja Turtles tomorrow. Ninja Turtles and Silk Song, it's finally time. We're gonna get some cool stuff there, some release dates. A shadow drop tomorrow of something? Yeah, that seems likely. Nintendo almost always has the, here's a title and coming out today, like Fall Guys or something like that. That might be one, for instance. I'm going to get into my crazier predictions in a moment, but I'm just setting the stage for what do we know about and what seems likely at this point. Batman has been rumored as well lately. I think it's all but confirmed at this point that a Batman Arkham compilation is coming to Nintendo Switch. Exactly what it entails is going to be what's really exciting because there are 4 main console Batman Arkham games. You have the ones made by Rocksteady, the ones made by Warner Brothers Montreal. Could we get all 4? That seems like a pretty beefy package. If we got Origins, Asylum, City, and Night, all those Arkham games on one 32 gigabyte cartridge download, no cloud versions. If everything was on one cartridge, that would be a big, pretty beefy value for $60, even though those games are older. Having them see how well they perform on Nintendo Switch, especially Arkham Knight, that one's a pretty good curiosity because that was a pretty cutting edge Xbox One, PlayStation 4 game that came out several years ago. It's not particularly new, but that would be another impressive one that is wow, that game today, even though it is a few years old, almost 6 years old, is a really good looking title. To see how well it holds up visually and in performance mode, and from a performance perspective in terms of resolution and frame rate and stuff like that, both in handheld and docked, wow, that would be cool. I know Arkham Knight isn't everyone's favorite of the Arkham games. Usually it's City, followed by Asylum, and then it kind of goes to Knight or Origins. But I liked Arkham Knight. Like, I still thought it was a really fun game. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But that one of these four is the most technologically demanding. So that's the one that I'm most curious to see. Will it be here? And how does it look like? And will this thing be $60? Or will it only include like 3 games, or hopefully not just 2, and be like a $40, $50 release? We'll see. If it's even happening, but I do think it is. We've also heard rumors of a 1-2 Switch. A lot of people talk down on 1-2 Switch, but you know, it's a multi-million seller. It sold few million copies, and it's probably in that several million category at this point. Nintendo doesn't always update its sellers across the board, just kind of what's selling relevantly. But 1-2 Switch is probably always trickling away and adding up hundreds of thousands per quarter and making its way into that next million category. 1-2 Switch, it was fun. That was the very first Nintendo Switch game that I played, and that was with John Cena at the Nintendo Switch Unexpected Places tour. It was February. Wow. Actually, come to think of it, yeah, 5 years ago. 5 years ago, right about now, I got to play Nintendo Switch a whole month before it came out in March, and that was with John Cena at Nintendo's Nintendo Switch in Unexpected. Man, why am I tongue-tied on that one? It was at Nintendo's Nintendo Switch in Unexpected Places tour here in California, and it was really cool. And of course, I got to be in the commercial with John Cena and the solo commercial of just fans and people that are into Nintendo and playing and reacting to it. So I got to be in both of those. I got to play The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild that day. Really special. So I've had some good impressions with 1-2 Switch. Obviously, my entry into it was pretty exciting and rare. Not many people could say that that was their first time playing Nintendo Switch, or Nintendo's 1-2 Switch for that matter, you know, in that manner. But also, even when I picked up the game myself at launch, and once in a while in the last few years, you know, playing with my wife, my kids, other friends that come over. We have, you know, a UFC pay-per-view, kind of pre-pandemic era. Used to have a UFC pay-per-view like every month, playing video games, Smash Brothers, Street Fighter, 1-2 Switch, and like, it was a good time. So a sequel, maybe a sequel with Nintendo IP, they can make this a lot bigger. Very different than a Mario Party. More along the line of, you know, what 1-2 Switch was, but, you know, thrown in with, you know, Samus and Zelda, Link and Mario and Star Fox and all these different characters and arms, and having different tangible stand up and move kind of mini games from all of these different IP. With your arms character reach out, and how many screws could you tighten? That kind of gets me thinking about a motion thing and fitness, and that kind of gets me into my first new prediction, and that's an expansion to Ring Fit Adventure. The game has sold over 10 million copies. It's one of the best-selling games on Nintendo Switch. Whether it's DLC or a direct sequel or a download, cartridge or download, hard to say exactly what they'll do, or new apparatus that you could connect to you. Even if not, some type of new software of Ring Fit Adventure would be interesting. Ring Fit Adventure Sports Edition? Maybe. But I think Ring Fit Adventure stands a chance at getting some type of update, but we'll see what. But I think it's going to at some point. I'm just not sure. Are they going to go to sports route, another kind of adventure mode, exercise route? What would be really interesting would be, you know, for some Nintendo titles, like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, for instance, older games get new modes, which is a Ring Fit Adventure mode. And I've talked about this over the last few years, actually, so this isn't really a new thought, but you could play through a, you know, pre-done entire run-through of a game like Breath of the Wild, where, you know, Nintendo's own people playing internally are playing through the game, going through all of the worlds, all of the stages, fighting all of the bosses, collecting things, doing all the quests and stuff like that. And it's kind of an on rails experience, but it's determined by you along the way, jogging in place, squeezing, doing actions and commands that then access, unlock their activity that propels the game forward. So this would be a way for maybe gamers that are not so in tune with controls and timing to learn all those kind of things that could just do, okay, exercise-based content, but experience the story of some of Nintendo's hits. Something like that, either retroactively incorporated into this game or for the foreseeable future, new entries like have a Ring Fit Adventure mode, that would be kind of swell. I would be pretty down with that. I would certainly experiment in it because I'm a fitness enthusiast myself. I'm a kinesiology major. I'm a sensei. I'm a university professor at the school that I graduated from. So, I teach kinesiology. This is my jam, right? I love playing games this type of way, right? Or this type of way if you have Joy-Con. But yeah, I would play some of these hit games jogging in place and stuff like that and squeezing the ring con and making sure my legs have good height with the Joy-Con strap on the thigh. I think that'd be fun. Any kind of VR, I'm mixing this bag right now in this video from likelihood to just kind of not stuff, but like I said, this is a video game talk segment too. We have long gone past news. Nintendo Labo Vr, they haven't done anything with it for a while. And I don't think they will do anything tomorrow, like announce Nintendo VR, Labo support for some new game coming out or some old game getting a new patch. I think Mario Kart would have been a good fit, first person perspective maybe, driving around. That would have been cool. I do think what Nintendo should do going forward, assuming that Nintendo Switch 2, is coming out in a few years, inside every Nintendo Switch 2 box, in addition to, okay, the dock, the new system, the new Joy-Con or replacement of whatever these, new side controllers are, there should just be a head strap, a good quality head strap that isn't cardboard, is plastic, rubber, pieces that the Nintendo Switch 2 slides into. And the Switch 2 itself has motion sensitive technology, maybe a camera on the outside for some type of spatial recognition. Controllers updated with even greater control and depth of gyroscope and accelerometers. And then out of the box, every single Nintendo Switch 2 sold is VR ready because it includes the headset. And it wouldn't be, amazing VR like some of the competitors out there, but every single Nintendo Switch 2 that sells is VR ready out of the box. That way, any developer out there could make a VR mode in their game right off the bat. They want to make it VR compatible. All right, good. Here are the specs. It runs at a little bit lower resolution. Boom, all you're getting is kind of movie theater mode where it looks bigger and you're on this 7-inch screen, but it looks like you're in a movie theater, and like that's your VR experience. Maybe some developers now, like, we actually want to make our game have a first-person perspective mode where you're boom into it and you're in the 3D world. But every developer could, knowing that every Nintendo Switch 2 owner has it. The reason why, back in the day, Nintendo 64 expansion pack only games never sold tremendously well is because not every Nintendo 64 owner had a Nintendo 64 expansion pack. The reason why no single PlayStation 4 VR game is, this giant seller is because not every PlayStation 4 owner has a PlayStation VR. And that goes with every kind of, additional product. It kind of could backfire once in a while. In the case of Xbox One, where they mandated that every Xbox One in the beginning was compliant with and used Connect 2.0, that took away some CPU horsepower that could have gone for other things, and it was reliant on, Connect 2.0. Connect 2.0 as a device was kind of beefy and expensive, but every developer could have used it. They just didn't. They didn't really care about it. But see, the risk here is mitigated because you're only asking Nintendo to put in a strap, put in a $15 piece of plastic, and there you go. Not talking about a $100 piece of plastic and cameras and stuff like that. See what I'm getting at? So that's kind of my longer future speculation / recommendation, but that would be smart. That would be the way to go. If developers don't want to use it, fine, they don't. But if anybody does, you're guaranteed that every Nintendo Switch 2 is VR ready. Even if it's not the best VR, it's VR ready. Okay, let's rewind back to what else could be tomorrow. I think without getting disappointed, but I think that Metroid Prime remake has a good chance of being shown off tomorrow. The way I see it, Metroid Dread launched really well. It was more front loaded, but it did manage to sell 2.74 million in the first 12 weeks, which is fantastic. Now it's time to build up a little bit of hype and get some Metroid Dread sales up again. How do you do it? You say Metroid Prime Remake coming this October. Metroid Prime 4 is still in development. Please wait a little longer. Here's the first look at Prime. If you have a saved file of Metroid Dread on your Nintendo Switch, it will unlock Samus Aran's costume and maybe a couple of other features in Metroid Prime Remake. Oh, all of a sudden, Metroid Dread trending again. It's going to spark some sales interest in this game. On the flip side, if you pre-order Metroid Prime off of the Nintendo Switch eShop, that will unlock something in Metroid Dread. You know, the costume going to be used in that game, the classic costume in this game. Or maybe even not tie it into that because people want to pre-order Prime physically. So forget about the pre-order idea. Just, you know, and as a free update to Metroid Dread, now available, Samus Aran's legendary classic costume for Metroid Prime, also coming out, you know, this fall for the 20th anniversary edition. You'll be able to play as Samus in that classic costume in Metroid Dread. Now, free update. So that's kind of like a tie-in, doesn't require you to pre-order it. But if you do get Prime and have that Dread save file, that's going to transfer over into that costume. Something small like that, it's not a tremendous amount of development time to incorporate that kind of thing. It's not a lot of resources, not a great cost, but it will give an impact where the amount of money and person hours to create that is going to be so far offset by how many sales Nintendo is going to get in extra Dread boost, right? So I'm on team Prime Remake showing off tomorrow. That other stuff on the Dread side of things, wishful thinking, but seems fairly plausible. What else do I think? Gosh, would I love it if they showed off just something of Metroid Prime 4. At this point, it's been over 3 years since the announcement of the reboot. So we've got probably 3 years and 3 or so months worth of actual development time spent on Metroid Prime 4 just from Retro Studios. If you take that year and a half or so of time that the former studio was working on it, presumably Bandai Namco, and Retro Studios was able to salvage any of those thoughts, audio clips, recordings, drawings of monsters, anything was salvageable, then that only adds to it. Of course, we have the pandemic that throws everything off. The game might not come out until, you know, November 2023 or March 2024 as a dual release on Nintendo Switch and on Nintendo Switch 2, right? A cross-gen game, significantly showing the improvements of what the game looks like and runs at on Nintendo Switch 2, but taking advantage of that massive 140 or so million Nintendo Switch install base whenever the game comes out, of course, you know, whether it's 120 million, 140 million at that time, that's what I'm talking about. So the game might not be out for a while, but could you show off a trailer? Gosh, at this point, like I said, it's been 3 years since any announcement, and even longer, of course, since the original logo, that very basic logo shown off at June 2017's E3, which is almost 5 years ago. Maybe. I don't want to be too greedy and build up the hype level too high. By the way, I'm not going to be disappointed with this Nintendo Direct. We have such a gorgeous look in 2022 that a small fraction of what I'm saying today could be shown, and I'd be thrilled. They could almost show off nothing new and just give the update on Kirby, Advance Wars, Splatoon, Zelda, Bayonetta, and I'd be like, that's awesome. You start throwing in stuff like Mario plus Rabbids, Sparks of Hope, another one that I think stands a good chance. Unless it is delayed until 2023 and the game got pretty ambitious, because we know that the studio working on it over at Ubisoft has gone up from like 100 people from the original game to around 300 now. So the size and scope is big. Maybe it got so big, and with pandemic impacting things, it's not going to come out till 2023. But if it comes out this year, it stands a good chance at being there tomorrow. So I want to say, yeah, it's going to be there. Not all of these things are going to be there, right? Like, there's no way. There's no way that everything that I'm saying right now is going to be there. But we have a couple of other things to talk about. There's been rumors of a new Fire Emblem, either a Fire Emblem remake of a classic title, a brand new Fire Emblem, or a Fire Emblem spin-off. We had our Warriors style Fire Emblem game. I could see a Bandai Namco developed Soul Calibur like Fire Emblem 3D Fighter if they were going to dive off into a different type of game, an action-oriented Fire Emblem or a Fire Emblem 3D Fighter. One of those seems like would be the most likely direction for a spin-off. But maybe a new actual Fire Emblem title tomorrow, that would be also major hype. I thought that Three Houses was impeccable. I loved it from start to finish. One of my favorite games on the platform. So a Fire Emblem would be great tomorrow. Xenoblade, another important one to discuss because the Xenoblade saga, the Xenoblade Chronicles saga of games has only gotten bigger and bigger in terms of sales and fandom. And I guess one of three things we could kind of see from Monolith Soft, maybe one of four. We could get Xenoblade Chronicles X, one of the last big games from Wii U that should at some point get ported to Nintendo Switch. That could be there. We could get Xenoblade Chronicles 3, a brand new game with a big ambitious scope, better graphics, more characters on screen, higher fidelity feel, like a more modern RPG feel in terms of size and scope and voice acting and fully glorious look at FMVs, right? Stuff that people like get attracted to. A lot of people get attracted to visuals first, and then they see the game, and then the gameplay, like, wow, right? You can't get attracted necessarily to gameplay right away because you haven't played itself, you haven't seen enough of it, but graphics, draw people in, and then it's up to, like, well, how are the controls? How is the sound? All that kind of stuff. But our sight, for most people, is the most powerful sense. Well, the first sense, at least. But at least in games. You don't really taste games. Unless if it's Nintendo Switch cartridges. I guess you could taste those. Not advisable, though. But Xenoblade, third possibility, is a spin-off. An action-oriented Xenoblade title. A Xenoblade Warriors style game where it's different characters from different Xenoblade games, from X, from 1, from 2 into 1. I don't know how likely that is. I see more likely that it's X remake or 3 than a Warriors style spin-off, but maybe not. Maybe it's 2. Maybe we get a couple of titles. And then I guess the fourth possibility is Monolith Soft just shows off a whole other thing. It's a different IP. It's a new RPG. And let's go. Maybe it's not even an RPG. Maybe it's an action game. Maybe it's an adventure title. Something grand. We have seen things. We have seen some artwork in the past from Monolith Soft that's not necessarily representative of Xenoblade, but could be within the same realm of size and scope. I think something Xenoblade shows up tomorrow. A lot of what I'm saying, by the way, is I think this shows up tomorrow, and I'm starting to realize, like, I'm running out of time. Like, if this is going to be a 40-minute or so long presentation, and most of the things that I said I think are going to show up, am I eating into that 40-minute clock? Is it too ambitious? Probably it's too ambitious, so probably not everything's going to show up. But a lot of the things, like I said, I'm like, yeah, I can see this one probably being there. Some honestly are a little bit more or less likely, but we'll see. And some of these are just random thoughts, like, Yoshi's Woolly World, I think, should come to Nintendo Switch. It's a really good quality title. It's on Wii U. More people need to play it. Star Fox Zero, more importantly, a new Star Fox game, but Star Fox Zero to come out and to be reworked would be solid. I love a new Star Fox, though. F-Zero deserves to come. Give me a new F-Zero. Give me a new Punch-Out. Like I said before, if you've been watching my channel a while, you know my idea about Nintendo Extreme Sports Racing, and that's this marriage of 1080p snowboarding, wave race, and excite bike in one grand mountain that you explore, and you're riding down the mountain slopes and hopping onto your motocross bike and going into the ocean and driving around racing. Like, that sounds like it would be fun if Nintendo were to do a different type of racing game. Donkey Kong. See, note that I didn't say, like, I think those games are going to show up. So I'm actually not saying everything's going to show up. I'm just saying possibilities now. So if I don't say I think it's going to be there, know that it is just a possibility or a fun idea. But new Donkey Kong. Whew, we got rumors on this one. A 3D ambitious Donkey Kong game? A 2D awesome Donkey Kong game? Something made internally by Nintendo that blows us away? It's been a while since Nintendo made their own Donkey Kong game. You know, the series has been associated with Rare back in the SNES days and on N64, and with Retro Studios on Wii U and the port of Tropical Freeze on Nintendo Switch. But you know, Nintendo hasn't made one in a while since Jungle Beat on GameCube. So whatever Donkey Kong we see, if we see it, would be cool. They might hold off on it and kind of tie it in a little bit better or closer to an announcement of like Donkey Kong theme park attraction opening up, and by the way, here's Donkey Kong game. They don't necessarily have to go hand in hand, but I could see that being a possibility. So Donkey Kong, I'm kind of on it being there tomorrow. I want to see it, trust me. But will it, since we already have a Kirby? You know, maybe. Maybe Donkey Kong. It has a chance. All of these have a chance, though. We have a chance that GoldenEye 007 remake comes out on Nintendo Switch. You know, it drops tomorrow. Maybe it's individually able to be purchased separately as its own entity on eShop. Maybe it's included exclusively for Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack owners, like, right? And there's crossplay between it and dropping on the Xbox, you know, Series S, X, One. You know, GoldenEye there. Not that they would necessarily announce like the Xbox version there, but the Xbox version gets announced like later in the day or something like that. Or not, but probably that game is all but confirmed, like coming to Xbox, it looks like. But GoldenEye, that would be a pretty big one. That would be a nice reason for people to upgrade to Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, I think. Especially if the game truly did have online crossplay with other platforms. Playing that on the Nintendo 64 Classic controller again would be awesome. Playing on the Pro controller, which I love too, which would be great. And on the Xbox controller as well, because I like that controller quite a bit as well. Any kind of NES, SNES drops, Sega Genesis N64 drops, you know, maybe. Those are always possibilities. People want Earthbound. People want Mother 3. I wouldn't say that that's never going to happen, but, you know, I'm not going to say it. I think Mother 3 is going to be shown tomorrow, you know. I'm just going to say not likely, right? Don't count on that one. We're not going to have a Nintendo Direct with a Smash Brothers character, but we're still getting, like, you know, some spirit battles, so that's kind of cool. Would they take up time in a Direct to have a spirit talk or have something from Masahiro Sakurai? I don't necessarily think so. Speaking of Mr. Sakurai, though, I would definitely love to see him do another Kid Icarus game. Start off by porting up Rising, and, you know, that was a great 3DS game. I'd love to see it on Nintendo Switch, reworked a little bit. Now I'm just kind of having fun with other stuff. The last two, if we get one, I'd be really happy. If we don't get either, but we get some of the other games I talked about, I'm still plenty happy. If we get both somehow, this is like the best Nintendo Direct ever. Super Mario Odyssey 2, Mario Kart 9. Right? I'm going into like, dude, you're talking like 11 out of 10 territory here if we're getting all this stuff. This October will be 5 years since we've had a totally new 3D Mario. We did get Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, in which the Bowser's Fury portion was all new, and that only came out, you know, this past February 2021, and that was a lot of fun. So it's only been a year old, and it gave us a new experience, but you know, for me, it took like 9 hours and 35 minutes to 100% that game, that component of it, which was great. But, you know, I'm ready for that next awesome Mario adventure. And when Nintendo had a hit in Galaxy, they made Galaxy 2. Nintendo has a mega hit in Odyssey in terms of sales and reception, so I think capitalize on that name, Odyssey 2. Kind of like how I think Breath of the Wild, one of the reasons why, in addition to them not wanting to spoil the name because it has something to do with something that's going to give something away, I think saying Breath of the Wild sequel connects people more to Breath of the Wild, as Breath of the Wild became bigger than Zelda itself. Zelda itself has always been big, but hasn't always sold big. You combine Zelda with Breath of the Wild, specifically BOTW, that's what you see online, that's bigger. So by keeping Breath of the Wild's sequel up there longer, that holds more weight than just new Zelda game. And if the sequel doesn't have, Breath of Ganon or Wild Sky or Sky of the Wild or some kind of crossover thing like that, right? If it doesn't have something like that and it loses the word breath or wild in it, maybe not as many people on the global mass level are looking at it as, oh, a Breath of the Wild sequel. It's a new Zelda game. Might or might not like it because of the name change. Maybe. Nintendo has to go through all of these different possibilities and doing a lot of internal analysis and see what is the best direction for them to go. Of course, maybe it will have Breath or Wild in the sequel's title, and they're just not ready to release it yet because there's another component of it that gives away something, some kind of crossover time thing with, Skyward Sword or Ocarina of Time or something like that. We'll see. But establishing a brand within the brand, some likeness, capitalize on Super Mario Odyssey and bust out Super Mario Odyssey 2. If they manage to pull this off and it's like the big December game, you've got Super Mario Odyssey 2 launching within a couple of weeks of the Super Mario CG movie. Wow, that's a brilliant thing. You somehow pull off a triple whammy of, we're happy to announce today that the Universal Studios California Super Nintendo World theme park has a new time of completion, June 2023. That's a little ways away, but see you then. You've got some expectation going for the park. You got the new game coming out. You got the new movie coming out. The gears are rolling. This is a powerful Nintendo here. This is the strongest Nintendo has ever been. They dominated the market in terms of hype and talk in the NES era, and SNES era still up there. They really smashed the scene with Nintendo 64, but their systems continuously got, lesser selling until we blew things up and shook up the game. On the handheld side, they did do really well with a long life of Game Boy, and thanks to Pokemon, really made that generation last that much longer. And GameCube had its successes. Wii U was a good game console, but just didn't do well, didn't crack 14 million. Virtual Boy was an exciting idea, but kind of was a failure from the start, sold fewer than 1 million units worldwide, unfortunately. DS was a giant shift in gaming, offering touch control, 2-screen control, clamshell to protect your screens, backwards compatibility with Game Boy Advance. Honestly, that DS Wii generation was peak Nintendo performance in terms of, new types of ways to play games and amount of games that came out and sold, because overall that's 1.8 billion games and 250 million pieces of hardware. I don't think Nintendo Switch is going to get to 250 million hardware or 1.8 billion games on it itself. Probably not, at least. So you could argue that maybe next to the NES era, it was really Wii and DS that was the strongest. But I think Nintendo Switch is the strongest yet because it is such a healthy system of marrying hardware and software teams, portable and handheld divisions all into one thing, and is nailing ports from third parties from other platforms. It's getting its share of timed exclusives when it comes to indies. It has ports from different Nintendo Wii U era on it available. Its online is the best yet for a Nintendo system. The new titles coming out to Nintendo Switch from Nintendo themselves are some of the best they've done. Their sales per entry are in many cases the best ever for Smash Brothers, for Mario Kart, etc. The talk, the social media aspect of how people are hyped up on it, the YouTube channel views on the Nintendo Switch related things being the highest ever compared to anything that they've shown off in the past. Like, I think by the time it's said and done, well, it's going to be the single best-selling Nintendo console ever. I think it'll top DS's 160 and hit 160 million. I think it'll top DS and be the first 1 billion. I'm very confident on that. By March 31st, 2024, 1 billion software will sell. No price drop yet. No player's choice permanent reduced lineup of software yet. Like, this is the strongest Nintendo's been. And since they are more bold with their outside usages of their IP, with shoe brands, with clothing lines, with movie, potentially with Netflix down the road or some other type of streaming service, whether it's Star Fox or Zelda or whatever related, you know, not just Mario and expansion and theme park, but Pokemon and Donkey Kong Land and stuff like that. Donkey Kong movie even maybe. Like this right now, we're living in peak Nintendo era. And I think in terms of strength, I think Nintendo Switch will go down as the best timeline of Nintendo in its history, which is kind of crazy because they have set the bar pretty high several times. Even when they weren't necessarily winning first place, they were still hitting the bar. And when they were hitting first place, like obviously, you know, hitting it high then. I'm just hyped. Like, I am really excited. It's an awesome time to be a Nintendo fan. Could we get any crazy third-party announcements? Like, not necessarily acquisition, although that would be crazy. Could you imagine? I'm not expecting like a Capcom and Nintendo teamed up and, you know, we announced a new partnership. Nintendo purchased Capcom and an exclusive deal. Like, I'm not expecting that. Well, that would be nuts, though. That would be wild. Whew. But a third-party partnership of some sort in terms of like, all right, here's the first look at a new Resident Evil game being made exclusively for Nintendo Switch. Kind of like Monster Hunter Rise. And Monster Hunter Rise, that summer break, we might see it tomorrow. That's been a while. Whew, there's so much. You know, as I'm thinking more and more, I'm like, what have I not said? What's like the obvious, I'm going to look back and say, oh my gosh, how did I not say that this is coming out? Or they're probably going to show this when they already said, like, this is coming, you know? Like, is there one of those titles right now? See, that's the thing. There's so much to talk about that we know about that probably will come out, and then that we kind of like want to think about, like, oh, give me that Star Fox, give me a Golden Sun. That, you know, it's a really wonderful conversation piece. I think that's going to do it, though. I gave you the news. I gave you my hype, why you should be hyped. I gave you a lot of possibilities, including some that are probably more likely than not. You know, and on the flip side, you know, some that are pretty far-fetched. A lot of just general fun. I get this type of fun every time that Nintendo says a Nintendo Direct is coming tomorrow, and 40 minutes is good. You know, if we break 40 and get like 42 minutes worth, that's going to be a really fun time tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'm going to be live streaming. Let me know what you thought of today's video. Are you as hyped as me? I'm a level 10. Will the Nintendo Direct be a 10 out of 10? Well, I don't know yet. My hype level is a 10, but what it will be is what it is depending on what is shown. If I'm legit surprised because I never saw that coming, like, oh my gosh, Nintendo cross Capcom 2D versus game made by Capcom with Nintendo and Capcom characters, I didn't see that. I mean, even though I'm saying it now, like, who saw that coming? You know, that's that, whoa, out of left field, shocking announcement. That would be absolutely wild. But, like, you know, whether or not we get anything that's truly unexpected, a good portion of those games that were not released or talked about in any capacity that I just made up hypothetical things of, some of those games that know that are coming or rumored to come, whether they come or not, it's going to be hard to not impress and not satisfy someone tomorrow. They could be like, bam, here's Pokemon Detective Pikachu on Nintendo Switch, and like that's going to satisfy some audience. They could be like, boom, here's Nintendogs. It's got a new release on Nintendo Switch and coming to your smartphone, so you could walk on in the outside world, kind of like you do with Pokemon Go or Pikmin, Bloom, but Nintendogs. I'll bring that data back, and it could talk with your Nintendo Switch version, and pet your digital puppies and kittens too. Nintendogs plus cats, like anything. Nintendo's got so much IP. What will they do? I am just stoked. Thanks for watching with me. This was a long video, but a lot of passion went into it. No cuts, just live to you all at once for almost an hour and 6 minutes straight. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much. This is Paul Gale Network signing out. I'll see you all tomorrow. Let me know what you thought about in the comments below of my video today. Take it easy. Bye.